Hi, I'm Chef Mike Nyland. I'm a Tucson personal chef, and I'm here to show you how to make a 3-cheese blend for pizza. First you start with shredded mozzarella, then a shredded provolone, and then a freshly grated Parmesan. You mix them all together in the bowl. And then you can use it for your favorite pizza. That's how you make a 3-cheese blend for your pizza.
Nearly a decade and a half ago, the Cooking Guide channel under the digital empire of eHow released the video 3-Cheese Pizza Blend, Tips for Making Pizza. The video stars Michael Nealon, a chef from Tucson, Arizona who teaches the craft of blending 3 different cheeses in a bowl. Chef Michael and the producers at eHow probably didn't predict that the video would garner nearly 2.5 million views. But it didn't garner that many views because of the groundbreaking arcane insight that Walmart packaged mozzarella and fake Parmesan work well on budget pizzas, but rather because eHow had released a series of videos broken down into some of the most simple of simple tasks made to be moron-proof. Like, make no mistake, the internet is filled with idiots, but I don't think it's necessary to make a specific video about how various types of grated cheese can be poured into a bowl. Unfortunately, there was not another video on how to use a pepper shaker. I really needed a tutorial on that.
Today I'm going to show you how to properly cut a pizza with scissors. Obviously you want to start with a clean pair of scissors. You take your pizza, being careful not to burn yourself. Then cut that in half. Cutting the other half in half, and then cutting each piece in half again. And you wind up with 8 slices. And there you have it, how to cut a pizza with scissors.
Yeah, this 1 minute and 20-second video got nearly 200,000 views, and it was just about how to cut a pizza with scissors. I made a documentary about the potential extinction of the human race, which got a whopping 100 plus views at the making of this current video. What's the point of human civilization without the ability to cut pizza in 8 equal slices? To be fair to Chef Michael, he was completely self-aware of the absurdity of the situation. He acknowledged how silly the video was, but was still happy knowing that it inspired people to cook. If you are in the Tucson metropolitan area, you can even hire him to cook you a pizza with pineapples on it. This legend is still active on X.com, where he posts thought-provoking tweets telling Stephen King to shove a, quote, fat dildo up your ass, end quote, along with memes of Squidward twerking. This video became emblematic of what is now known as slop content. Slop content is usually low-effort, lazy, low-quality content which is mass-produced for views and thereby ad revenue. The term has become popular with the rise of AI content, but it's far older than that. Now, slop usually refers to low-quality food produced and consumed, such as gruel during the Victorian era, or Indian street food, or sloppy joes, which are quite possibly the only type of food which looks more appetizing when it comes out of your ass than when it comes into your mouth beforehand. You know you're dealing with slop when the food you're dealing with looks like it's been digested already. The same story works with the production and consumption of online content. Content which is consumed quickly and in mass is easily produced and easily digested and also easily shot out. Long before the AI revolution, there was the aforementioned website eHow.com. Now, eHow.com was launched during the hype of the dot-com boom of the late 90s, before the bubble crashed. During the late 1990s, there was a feeling of exuberance around the tech revolution and the emergence of the information age. I mean, just look at McDonald's website during the 90s. Nothing says delicious slop more than the inside of a McNugget. Everyone was getting a website at this time, even Playboy, although it wasn't quite as titillizing as the Hub though. However, unlike Amazon and Google, which would move on to become giants, eHow.com would join America Online as one of those internet trailblazers which still exists, but has faded off into the background. Why, you might ask? Well, because eHow.com pioneered the proto-version of internet slop, oftentimes known as being a content farm. In the same way that diploma mills create bogus low-quality degrees for people who want a fake degree, content farms mass-produce a giant amount of low-quality content in the hopes of satisfying the algorithm of whatever platform they posted on, taking advantage of search engine optimization, otherwise known as SEO. While many individual pieces of content fell through the cracks and got no traction, some eventually did, leading to large sums of views and ad revenue. This turns digital shit into gold. eHow has an absolutely gigantic library of low-quality, low-effort content, mostly composed of tutorial videos. Content farms usually produce slop, which produces clicks, which in turn results in ad revenue.
More money.
However, this usually is not that good of a long-term strategy. In 2001, eHow filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. It was eventually bought by Demand Media, which is a company which is quite good at creating demand for media, even though that media isn't worthy of much demand. On top of that, countless slop articles were written, churned out by low-paid workers. Keep in mind that this was before ChatGPT. Now, is this a story of evil capitalists taking advantage of certain incentive structures to pollute our environment in order to control the world with the power of shitty videos about decorating your house like a spinster new age wine aunt? Well, maybe, but not really. One of the former owners of eHow wasn't satisfied with the Temu Taco Bell slop of eHow.com, but still saw value in everyday tutorial videos. So he founded WikiHow, which produces high-quality tutorial videos, and this was met at first with critical acclaim for videos and articles about cooking, cleaning, home maintenance, and a variety of other subjects. However, WikiHow was not immune to the power of slop, with articles like quote-unquote, how to walk, and how to high five. To be fair, given the fact that TikTok is turning the brain of the average teenager into mush, there will probably come a day when these tutorials are necessary. At some point, I'm pretty sure that WikiHow turned into a quasi-troll farm with articles like, quote, how to shower with a lemon, how to urinate in the ocean, discreetly. It's kind of hard to tell when someone is pissing in the ocean, but sure. On top of that, there were other articles like how to apologize to a cat and how to determine if you are addicted to wearing diapers as an adult. My personal favorite by WikiHow is called How to Gleck. I had no idea what Gleck meant. Apparently, it's the art of ejecting saliva from under your tongue. A life-changing skill indeed. The most self-aware of these websites probably has to be Howcast, which even uses clay animation to educate people on how to not get mauled by a grizzly bear. I am just a little bit disappointed that their video on how to, quote, live in your car didn't include any tips on where to hide your crack stash from the police. Now, as much as I love a lot of this how-to and life hack content, many of these quote-unquote content creators are the perfect example of what is called N-shitification, a term coined by the intellectual property writer Cory Doctorow. Doctorow, I'm assuming that's his real name, argues that over the course of time, online services decline in quality, even though they increase in quantity. After all, WikiHow started out with articles on how to rebuild a car engine and later ended up with tutorials on how to quote-unquote Have fun alone in your bedroom, girls only. Is this woman gonna pleasure herself to a picture of the former British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher? Maybe Pornhub needs to produce some female-friendly adult slop content too. There would also be the rise of clickbait websites that specialized in low-effort listicles and quizzes, churned out like the McRib meat, such as BuzzFeed and Upworthy. These were all designed to produce easy-to-digest lists-based articles that garnered clicks by appealing to young adults with a 4th grade reading comprehension level. This included insight into which bulges are the best. Websites like BuzzFeed would eventually be parried by the website Clickhole under the satirical company The Onion. By the 2010s, the use of personal websites declined as a handful of major social media platforms dominated the scene: Facebook, Twitter, and this one website called YouTube. I've never used YouTube before, but friends have told me that it's a really good place to learn how to mix different types of processed cheese together. The slop economy would shift away from personal and middle-tier websites into massive platforms. Most content farms would gain a large swath, if not most of the revenue, from these major platforms and the ad revenue they generated. Hence why our buddy Chef Mike appeared in those aforementioned YouTube videos. This consolidation of internet content into a handful of websites also led to the use of quote-unquote click farms. Click farms emerged as a proto-version of the view bots that have ravaged much of the internet today. However, unlike the view bots, which are, well, bots, click farms were composed of large sums of low-wage workers, usually from the Indian subcontinent, whose job it was to click on content to boost its SEO. In 2011, Google even needed to adjust its algorithm to deal with click farms. This is part of the reason why clicking on a thumbnail and leaving immediately is pretty terrible for the video's SEO. Slop content would come in multiple forms, such as Facebook pages, reposting other people's content, basically acting as ad revenue parasites. And whenever there is some scummy slop trend, you can be sure that YouTubers will jump on it. One of the most notable old fads was the React Girl phenomenon. Back in the day, YouTube would display response videos, usually titled, quote, RE, whatever the title of the original video was. This was meant to create online communities and people exchanging ideas. But alas, it usually led to some young woman with more silicone than gray matter responding with some inane pap takes. Reply girls would essentially engage in a form of low-key content theft, replying to successful videos made by YouTubers who put effort into their content, but instead they would just watch it and then blurt out some quasi-sentences hoping that their mammary glands would attract enough viewer traffic to get some ad revenue. These videos would be downvoted into oblivion and the trend disappeared, and the reply feature was eventually removed by YouTube. Or did the trend completely die out? React content would re-emerge as a different version of the reply girl content, but even lazier. This usually involves someone watching someone else's content with themselves in the corner. While this is fine if you're genuinely producing new and interesting transformative perspectives on the original subject matter of the original video, many of these React tubers didn't really add anything substantial to the content. The most well-known of these is probably Jinx, whose talents included staring blankly like a deer in the headlights at the video he was watching and then occasionally giggling. This too would be met with a significant backlash. React content proved to be even more slop-prone than the tutorial videos. I personally see far more value in learning how to properly shower with a lemon than watching this nano-brain blather. To be fair, React content did have a bit more of an appeal than the reply girl slop. This probably has to do with the quote-unquote parasocial relationships that emerged from this React content. Parasocial relationships are a relationship in which a public figure who is not aware of your specific existence is still aware of having a large audience, a group of people who love them and sometimes even hate them. The casual, everyday, low-effort style of content creation provided a sense that you were hanging out with friends, just an average Joe, not some incredibly talented content creator who was off in some sort of different dimension. And keep in mind, this was happening at a time when people were becoming more digitized and atomized. as more and more social isolation was becoming an ordinary part of everyday life. This was taken to a whole new level with streamers on websites like Twitch and Kick. These streamers can provide hours of content day by day to a live audience. The streamers operate in a similar fashion to news stories in the sense that you aren't meant to consume any of the content a second time, let alone a third time, unlike, say, music or to a lesser extent movies and television shows. Twitch has also proved to be far more lenient on copyright violations than YouTube, allowing people to watch Hell's Kitchen and 90 Day Fiancé without getting demonetized. While there are some streamers who are genuinely talented, most of the success of this content comes from the long-form slop production mixed in with parasocial relationships. To be fair, the most tolerable parts of Hassan Piker's streams are the times in which he leaves the stream to take a dump and you just are left with his chair and you can have a meaningful parasocial relationship with this piece of furniture, which in my opinion is far better than Hassan Piker. In more recent years, there's also been a rise in the genre of self-proclaimed slop tubers. These are content creators which usually respond to online drama, usually with vague titles like "It's over," "This is disgusting," "This is garbage," etc. Negativity attracts clicks, but given that most of these slop tubers are self-aware of their own low-quality content, it's really hard to hate them. Even their communities engage in self-depreciating humor. However, I still suspect that these channels will soon fizzle out unless they reinvent themselves. It's easy to produce mass amounts of views and large sums of ad revenue with this sort of slop content, but at the same time it doesn't incentivize these content creators from building any skills or talents under their YouTube journey, and as a result it will be very difficult for these creators to reinvent themselves. But all of this human-made slop would be a drop in the bucket compared to AI slop. In the same way that view bots were a more effective way to fake views than hiring a bunch of Bangladeshi kids in a click farm, paying them 5 cents an hour to click on random articles, AI slop proved to be far more effective at producing slop content in the first place. By 2022, ChatGPT was released, and it was able to mass produce articles. For example, I asked ChatGPT to write me a speech of Donald Trump praising SpongeBob. Here it is. Alright folks, thank you. Thank you very much. It's a tremendous honor to be here talking about somebody truly incredible. And I know incredible people, believe me. SpongeBob SquarePants. Nobody talks about it, but we should. SpongeBob is a winner, total winner, lives in a pineapple under the sea. Very unique real estate, by the way. Probably the best pineapple property anywhere underwater. Prime location, Bikini Bottom, fantastic place, strong community, great energy. And SpongeBob, what a worker. The work ethic. This guy wakes up every morning excited to go to work, loves his job. Works at the Krusty Krab, flips those Krabby Patties better than anybody. Nobody flips like SpongeBob. You watch him, dedication, enthusiasm, positivity. Frankly, a lot of people could learn from that. A lot. I spared you guys from my Trump impersonation because my Trump impersonation is even worse than Stephen Colbert's. Now, don't get me wrong, ChatGPT and AI in general is really good for writing great literature like boring emails and basic explanations, but it's also led to people over-relying on AI to communicate ideas, oftentimes ideas which weren't theirs. This has led to a number of fake articles and essays, which media and academia are currently dealing with. Hey kid, why don't you post a link of this clip on your resume? Thank you for disproving the harmful stereotype that all Asians are smart. The most notable example of AI slop are the images. These images are mass-produced and look fairly realistic, although not completely realistic. The early stages of AI slop attempted to be photorealistic, and overall they did a really good job. Sometimes too well. However, generally speaking, the textures were a little bit too perfect. And on top of that, the material displayed was just too hard to believe. Little flaws were actually quite common. For example, here is a picture of Gordon Ramsay as some sort of crustacean. Still not as good as our Lord and Savior, Jesus of the Shrimp. On top of that, why is Trump taking a dump with his pants on? Speaking of Trump, and no, this is not a political video, One of the most infamous Slop videos was an AI-generated video posted by him about his plan in Gaza.
To set you free, bringing the light for all to see. No more tunnels, no more fear. Trump Gaza is finally here. Trump Gaza shining bright, golden future, a brand new light. Feast and dance, the deal is done. Trump Gaza number one. Trump Gaza shining bright, golden future, a brand new light. Feast and dance, the deal is done. Trump Gaza number one.
Wait, are the Trump souvenirs a golden figurine version of the previous Slop I showed of him before on the toilet? And why are the rails on the shelf going through the souvenirs on the top shelf, but not on the one below it? The answer is obvious. AI Slop is, well, slop. With that being said, photorealistic Slop images were replaced by images of other artistic forms, such as those stylized as anime, in the form of cubism, or even Disney-esque animation, etc. At first, the power of AI was so intimidating that many people were worried that it would quickly overtake humans. After all, producing art, culture, and technology is how many people make a living, and how many of us find meaning in our lives. After all, unlike the dot-com boom, which was met with optimism, the AI boom was met with pessimism. But the fact that much of this has been labeled as slop shows me that many people still value authenticity. Perhaps AI will not replace humans, but will be used to perform the more mundane, boring tasks behind the scenes. This will free up time to bring content to higher and higher heights. Artificial or natural, quality has the staying power. Or in another scenario, maybe we'll just give up on creating high quality content and just watch clips like this.
希望颠簸左右的浑浊，给你还有星辰，你往前走，不要回头，看天让你走过谁都有理由。